innovation, bringing more out of the classroom thinking for our children, seeing them as global citizens. All these things that are happening have been started during the regime. Let me not say, okay, Anshu, you, but it started off during that time, and a lot of these changes have been happening. We are very, very honored and delighted to have you with us. Thank you. And we have Dr. Venita Kaul with us. And Jaya, will you come here, then I can introduce both of you and we can start our session. We'll have a briefer session, I think. It doesn't matter. So basically we brought these tables down here because we can stand and we can talk and we'll be closer to the thing rather than distance of a dais between us. Dr. Venita Kaul has been in NCRT, she has been in the World Bank, she has developed material for early learning, and now she is heading the Early Learning Center in Ambedkar University. A lot of the importance that we as teachers and as parents and as people concerned about education in our country, we start with early education, and that's what Venita has been doing extremely well. Over the years, looking at, what is it that early learning needs? How do we look at early learning that's happening for children? How can it be holistic? How can it be a natural learning that children can get? So, thank you for being here with us, Venita, and we welcome you to this forum. We have Jaya Acharya here. Jaya started with me in Katha in 93 or 94, I think she joined. 90. Because 89 there was nobody at that point, I was all by myself. 1991 we started getting people. Jaya was one of the first people to join. After that she's gone on to do some really, really amazing things. And she finished off at Room to Read. I don't know whether all of you have heard about Room to Read. Have anybody here who doesn't know Room to Read? You don't know. Okay. I'll ask Jaya to tell you a little bit about Room to Read, but this is this awesome kind of a movement which has started off, where they've started libraries in places where there are no libraries. So you'll find that, probably the highest library in the world is probably a Room to Read library. They must be running it somewhere, in the Himalayas somewhere. Because they're all over the place, they've been running libraries, getting children into reading. And that experience of, how children read and why they read. Because many times, as adults, we say, this is what we know children like to read, it is what we think children should be reading. With so much arrogance, I think, as adults, we think we know what children have to read, and we say, this is what they need. But we don't know really. None of us have gone and studied. And then, people like Venita, people like Jaya, who've been working with children, they come to this understanding that, it's not for us to say what they will read. And I think that's where, we will have Jaya coming in today, and we hope that Jaya and, so I'm handing the mic over to you. There are two mics in front. Please. Yes. You know the session, right? We are looking at it. Yes. Words into words and, the whole idea of reading.
Thank you very much, Geeta. Such a pleasure to be here on Sunday morning and to see so many people here on a Sunday morning. That really shows the interest in children and children's literature and children's reading. I have just 10 minutes, so I will just not waste the audience's time or anybody else's. Straight away, I think I've taken my cue from what Geeta just said. Why do children read and how do we encourage them to read? I will not say how they read, but how do we encourage them to read? And I think this is a very, very significant session and very significant theme today, because in the country today and in the world over, we are finding that children are not reading. Children are going through primary school, reaching up to grade 5, grade 6, without even learning to read and write. And here we are talking about read and how do they learn to read. Why is reading so important? And there's a lot of research happening today, which is showing that it is extremely important that children very early in life get into the habit of reading. It is said that children learn to read in the lap of the mother. I would not say only the lap of the mother, I would say the lap of the father as well. But this is a more traditional view. I think I'm just quoting somebody. Sorry, but that is because we are thinking in terms of a very literate family environment where the mother is very educated and the mother is interested and mother reads and the children read, or the father reads and the children read. But our majority of our children, if you see, don't come from that kind of a background. Even if the mother's parents are educated, first of all, many children come in whose parents are not educated. But even if parents are educated, they don't necessarily are in the habit of reading themselves. So there is no reading environment at home. There is no learning environment at home. And therefore it becomes even more important for the schools to pitch in and compensate for what the children are not getting at home. Why must they read? Today research is showing that very early introduction to reading and to books, basically into books I would say, into stories, into books, is what is going to make a difference for life, because it is giving them the basic foundation which is going to help them later in academic life even, as well as life skills for life. That reading not only helps in children's own language development, they get exposed to so much of vocabulary. I remember my own little son, he's a young man now, but when he was a little boy, my two sons, they were into reading Hindi text. But we never spoke much of the real clished Hindi. We used to speak Hindustani. And this one, I remember, he was just about 3 or 4 years old, and he got angry with the older son, and he said, older brother, and he said, "मैं तुमको नष्ट कर दूँगा." I was wondering where he's got this nashd from. Till I discovered it came from Amar Chitra Katha. So negative and positive. There are all kinds of vocabulary that children pick up, but where do they pick up from? They pick up from where they read. I also recall that when I was teaching in a school for 2 years, we used to be doing a lot of storytelling, and then we used to do a lot of story creation, ask children to create stories. And I would always find that the creation of stories was a mix of ideas and images that they got from the stories that they had been told over the week. So where do they get those ideas? They get them from reading or from stories, from listening to stories. So I think that it is so important for children to open up their worlds much beyond what is their immediate world through the whole process of getting into reading and to storybooks. And this is later because most, I would say all perhaps, of academic learning is based on reading, it's based on language. Today children are not performing in mathematics. I'm told after class 3, when you do an analysis of what the problem is they cannot read the problems. Because they are not able to, not that they don't know the mathematical aspects, but they cannot read the problem, so they don't understand it. Or even if they read, there is no comprehension. Basically because they are only limited to their own reading. A very interesting point that comes up is that why children should read is also because it not only stirs up their imagination, it also brings in a sense of empathy, which is something very interesting that I was recently exposed to. Because children, when they follow up a certain character in a story, and as they are living the life of that character through that story, because they are so engaged in the story, they learn to empathize. So it's something so wonderful for them to do. They also do, it also helps them in terms of their intellectual development, their cognitive development, and so on. They get solutions from the problem sometimes when they are stressed and they are going through some kind of a stressful experience. They relate to that, and somewhere it also gives them a sense of comfort that they are not alone in whatever the stressful situation is, because they are living through some other person's similar situation. So these are some very, very important reasons why children should be reading. But more importantly, I'll just spend, maybe I've just got 5 more minutes. Just tell me when I'm through. More importantly, I would like to stress on why is it that children are not reading? Or how we should encourage them to read. I think the most important thing, of course, as I was saying, research is showing that children as early as 2 years, and today we are talking about infant books. not only storybooks for children as they grow older, but even infant books, because the research is showing that children should be exposed to reading and to stories and to books, not just stories, but into books as early as in the infancy stage. And there are big picture books and all that which are coming in and known as infant books. So somewhere the exposure has to be so early in life because, again, if you look at the neuroscience, brain is developing very fast in the first 6 years of life. It is a very rapid pace, and that is most 80 to 90% of the brain development has happened by the time the child is almost coming into the primary school. So if we are losing out on that opportunity to introduce the child to any kind of exposure to books, that is the time when the child will lose out, perhaps for life. You know, it will be very difficult to get the child back into getting engaged with books and literature. And not only that, the whole approach to that has to be very different. Now, when we say exposing children to books and to reading, are we talking about exposing them to the alphabet? This is the most important concern in my mind. But how do we introduce children to reading? Do we introduce them to reading through first looking at the alphabet, writing the alphabet, 3 pages of the alphabet, write 3 pages for your homework on B,
pictures will be there.
Yeah. I will just tell you, just 2-3 days back, somebody who's a teacher educator was telling me that she was doing a session with teachers, and she is from Odisha, and she made them write the Odia alphabet for 2 days. She said, just keep writing this. And they got so angry with her, all the teachers, and they said, what business have you to waste our time like this? They said, this is a meaningless activity. So they said, she told them that if it is a meaningless activity for you, how meaningful is it for the children? They don't have any interest in that alphabet. So how do we introduce them? We introduce them by starting to tell stories. And starting to tell stories from books. Not just tell stories orally, but stories from books. And help them to bond with books. I think the most important, the starting point of the whole process of reading is establishing that bond with reading through books, through storybooks. That is most critical. And how does that happen? Because when we are teaching children, can you teach children to read? I'm not so sure. You can only help them learn reading. And when you are helping them learn reading, the first and important point is they must be interested in learning. We don't learn anything that we are not interested in. People can teach us for donkey's years, but we will still not learn. But only if our interest is evoked will we learn. So the whole approach has to be to get children interested in reading. And how will they get interested? Through something very fascinating, something very imaginative, something that captures their attention through books, so that they associate books with something pleasurable. And once that is done, half the battle is won. And then they can get on to reading in whatever way form, because they are interested. I will just end off by saying, so I think the most important thing to do is to introduce them to stories, introduce them to picture books, introduce them to some kind of, a lot of print and text material, so that they associate all this with some fun, with some activity, with something to engage with. If we are giving them alphabets, if we are giving them letters to write, or a colleague of mine just yesterday was telling me she was a little fretful, being in the area of education, that her little son is going to a kindergarten class. She says, days after days, they don't tell these stories. They make them do cursive writing, and they make them spend days doing that. She says, I just want to get the child out. Now, this is not only this particular school, which is quite a prestigious school, but there are many such schools all over whose total occupation is with getting children to read and write alphabets or numbers or words or whatever. But there is no emphasis on getting them interested in learning, and that should be the key. Last point I would like to say, and I would like to quote, why is it so important for children to be interested? There is a very famous psychologist, Dr. Lillian Katz, who gave this hypothesis. She called it the damaged disposition hypothesis. She says that when you are putting children through any kind of learning that is not pleasurable, that is not appropriate for their level, and reading and writing is something that has to have a certain level of maturity to be able to read without getting interested, to be able to read something that is given to you. She says what happens is because you put in a lot of effort, and the child also puts in a lot of effort under pressure. So what happens is that the whole process of learning does not remain positive or pleasurable. It becomes a pressured experience for the child. And because it puts in so much pressure on the child, what happens is the outcome of this becomes counterproductive in the sense that the children learn to read and write, but they lose the disposition to use those skills. So they learn to give you all the right three-letter words and five-word sentences, but why are we teaching children to learn to read? I think this question is very important, which all teachers must think. It is not to get them to get into reading their science and environmental studies or later. That's also part of it. It's not that it is not. But that is a process. But why are we getting them to read? Because it's a skill for life. It's a skill for life. And to make it a skill for life, you have to get the pleasurable aspect of it emphasized so that they are associating pleasure with reading and want to read. And that is what's going to then get them into much more of reading. And for that, stories and storybooks are absolutely essential. Thank you.
Your kids have been that I think by and large you guys know most of the things and you are well aware of a lot of things, which is really nice to see, that you were well aware why we should, make the children read and why they should be reading more, how they should be reading, all of that. So I think I will not get into too much, and I think Venita has really put it very well. In 10 minutes she has really wonderfully, put the real things before you. But I share with you some experiences, through my journey generally. As she said, it began with Katha, believe it or not. I was just a teacher, teaching the collegiate school students and little kids whenever I got opportunity. It was Katha which was a turning point in my life because I really discovered the potential inside me that yes, I had that passion for kids where I could work for them and I could do a lot of things. It was a brief experience, but it was the most wonderful experience which I remember forever. And since then I have gone a long way working with children in several ways, and life has given me wonderful opportunities. It just came my way. So through all my district primary education programs, Shiksha Abhiyan, and then my EDC and Room to Read, all of these, somehow I just got to work with children all around reading. It was just chance that what was my passion. Basically, I myself got into these things automatically. But my recent experience with Room to Read has been one of the most wonderful in many ways because I got to know and got to experience children across 7 countries where I really discovered such lovely things. Of course, that children across the world are the same. Whether from back of the beyond, the rural areas, disadvantaged children,
And in Room to Read, when I joined, this was what, it was a beautiful organization with a real high profile, with huge numbers, which were daunting when I joined. So many libraries opened and thousands of libraries opened here and there and, established in such beautiful libraries, etc. But my one question was, are the children reading? Our goal was to develop habit of reading in all children. Now I said, are we really developing? We are saying we're reaching out to so many millions of children. Are we really developing habit of reading in them? How are we, measuring that? Are we looking at that? And that is where the real thing came, when I went into deeper the things. It was all about establishment. Library really doesn't mean, having a nice library with beautiful, wonderful books and well arranged, well displayed, and children, going to it regularly every week, sitting there for a while. It doesn't mean that for little kids at all. We discovered that actually we shouldn't say library for children at all. What we should be saying is just, story books or story corners or reading places for children. Because the moment you talk of library, the concept which comes in everyone's mind is, a place where they're supposed to sit quietly and read. When we're talking of little children, there is no way they can sit quietly. And if you're making them sit quietly, then they're not actually reading and interacting. And so we changed all of that and said, okay, and when I got in, I said, I want to work for actually reading. So how does one do that? That's the toughest job, right? Providing the best of resources, it's also expensive and all, but I think that is the easiest. And to reach out to all of them and put, things in place, various models of library, all of that. But the toughest thing is, especially in the government stream, where we have all manner of teachers. There are not so motivated teachers, there are good teachers, there are some dull teachers. They sometimes actually don't know how to go about it. Sometimes they know, but they're not doing all of that. A variety of teachers, and we have to work with them who actually have to, put this in practice. So there was this, we went around all countries, visiting schools and hundreds of schools, trying to understand what will click. There are libraries, we are setting it up, but they're not really using, because they have this traditional thing in mind. The library means children go in a queue, all nicely go and sit there, pick up a book nicely and sit down. And that we saw wasn't helping, because they would turn 40 minutes, after all, what is 40 minutes? It's no time actually. It just passes like that. And they would just about turn the pages, look at the pictures and keep the book and come back. There came, the idea that one will have to strategize something. So that is where actually I started working, to have a reading strategy, what I call, and have a strategy according to the school and place, and think, what will work with all kinds of teachers. Not just, the real good teachers who are very proficient and who know all the psychology and the things behind them. The simple teacher who doesn't really understand, but he knows that, yes, the books have to be read. So then it all started with, okay, we have 40 minutes. We have to first work on increasing the time. So there was this, huge momentum, working with governments, at local governments, central governments. First of all, we must have a lot of reading time for children. We have provided space, but that is not enough. And time doesn't mean just once a week or something. We have to have every day at least one period a day for library. And when we say library time, it's just story reading time and fun time for children. So that had to be worked. And it itself took 2 years to work to convince them why. No, but what about the curriculum? The syllabus, God. If you take away one period, hamara to itna piche ho jayega. No, we can't do that. I'm sorry. And it was a struggle to make them first educate the top level government and the district government and the local bodies, everyone, why it is important. So that, that this thing starts from educating the parents, the community, the local governments, that why it is important. And habit of reading won't, come so easily. Once we got that everyday time, then it was great fun. Because then we said, okay, if you have even, when you have 40 minutes, handling children means actually effectively 20 minutes. Let's be, I'm talking more of little children. Of course, with older children, you can get more time. So effectively, if you're getting 20, 30 minutes, how to optimize that time? How does one, have a strategy on time on task so that each child gets maximum time to interact and read both. So, we had these little strategies where we said, okay, in a 30 minutes, if 10 minutes are provided for the teacher to tell a story aloud, one must ensure the rest of the 20 times for the child to interact and read out the story and talk and discuss and ask questions and, answer questions and so on. Otherwise, reading is meaningless. Okay, so that's how, the strategy began. And then it developed into, a lovely set of strategies where we said, one day we'll be doing reading aloud, one day we will be doing, shared reading, day the children will get a chance to do peer learning, where there'll be pairs and they'll be doing just reading and then talking to themselves. And talking, nonsense. Let them have fun and let them talk a lot, yap a lot. So that, it all comes out from within. And that has to be facilitated by the teacher. And for that, teachers have to be prepared. So that's how the journey began. And wonderfully, actually, the teachers also started enjoying the whole thing when they understood that they don't have to work too hard. All they have to do is make them sit in a certain way and they'll just leave them alone. Just a little help here and there. And, facilitate the right kind of sitting arrangements in groups sometimes, in pairs and outside sometimes in half-class activities, one team trying to kind of play with the other and so on. So, well, there is a lot more about the reading strategy some other time because, there are 2 minutes I have. Okay, so I can wind up. So basically what really came out of this, I would like to tell you, is that this reading strategy then, when it started filtering down at all levels, the children actually themselves started initiating, and we soon found that the teacher actually wasn't required in most of the cases. The children themselves took over once they were exposed to these activities. And when I say activities, doesn't mean any and any, hundreds of activities. No, you don't need so many. Just the simple these activities, sitting in a particular way and just talking about stories, about, other things, whatever they were reading, the newspaper or whatever. Ultimately, it happened that the children themselves wanted to, come out in the open and do those things in front of the parents and in front of the teachers, have relay race where they were doing reading and running. Simple things teachers came out with. And they had told us, what we do is that children, boys, usually, they don't want to sit still. They just want to run around in things. We said have relay activities for them where they'll be reading a little story and then running and handing over to the other to carry on with the story, and then the other one. So these little things, and there are hundreds of such activities which came out outside the school. Why I'm saying this? Because then it went to the community. Then it was like exposed to the parents. Oh, this is what is happening. They are actually doing something worthwhile. They are reading, they're not just playing. And this reading is developing into habit. And actually, we did some analysis and took feedback. It was started helping them in their curriculum also. They were reading faster, and the teachers started saying that the language, Hindi and English, which we were trying to teach them for a year, now suddenly they are, doing it so easily. So this is all, I think, because of that. So even though it is not, as an aim for curriculum, but parents understand that. So, for them, that is one thing which is successful. So thank you very much for listening to me patiently.
No, it was lovely. It was lovely. Now, the floor is open for further questions, further discussions with the two people who have been talking to us, sharing so many of their ideas. Yes.
Read something, and if he is not listening, then I ask, okay, what could have happened? What was happening? Then he again comes to the vibes. That yeah, of course, then he shares that yes, Mama, this was that was that, and then make him to the point that no, you are wrong. Now let us see what happened actually in the story. You are claiming your own one. So gradually, I find that somehow he waves out. He wavers, his mind wavers, and he starts losing attention. Even if I catch up so many that imaginary stories and all those pictures. So how to really develop? Because it really becomes a boring activity if I continue to do it in the class or at home that okay, let us sit today. Because we do plan that co-reading even in the class. We point out anyone, okay fine. We call it name-wise, the student will stand up and then they have to find out where is the reading going on. And then we ask, what was happening? No, now you again read it. Then he finds out, so this is the way to entrust. But I have found it that with the passage of time, these things, they lose their basic essence. It becomes a boring activity. So then gradually they move on to the technical essence. Let us watch. Today's generation is more so interested in visual medium. They would rather love to watch a story rather than reading. Their first point is you tell. You show me a picture, then I'll tell you. So how to really move on that and take their interest to this frame? That is my big question. Even in seniors, I mean, we have. Tell us the summary. That is it.
Ran from Neela Sharma, DPS Rohtak. And the same thing is senior classes like 11 and 12. Ma'am, please just tell us the summary. Once you summarize the lesson, and then it's okay. I summarize. 10 minutes, just read the lesson. So that's something to get in it. Once the visual is shown, everything is there. Ma'am, this was the PPT, and then the summary, and then and now the questions. And in 10th class, okay, let us look at the questions now. No, ma'am, we have that literary companion. Ma'am, we just go through it and do it. So, ma'am, that's something. I mean, just to make it more interesting, we could get some clues from you.
And I would get back to that my 8-year-old son. How to cultivate the reading
Same. And one thing that I really got is that this thing, I'm surely going to do it. Yeah, I'm going to surely do it with my school from class 1. Like library, I myself will be inspecting it, like how, supervising it, if it is going right way or not. Bring them to the library, give them the storybooks of their own choice in pairs. First I'll start with 2 people, let them talk and let me see what the outcome is. And if it is there, so I'll really keep in touch with you and I'll give you the outcome of it. This is something I really like it and I'm going to do it for sure.
So, Prabhat,
you can all keep your comments brief, please, because we get a lot of people should come and try to share. Thank you.
So, Prabhat, मैं अखिलेश तिवारी छत्तीसगढ़ से हिंदी शिक्षक हूँ। एक मेरा प्रश्न है, एलकेजी या यूकेजी में हमारे यहाँ आमतौर पर ये समस्या होती है कि जैसे मैडम ने कहा कि गृह कार्य दे दिए, अब आज आपको 5 बार लिख के आना और खाल को लिख के आना, लेकिन मूल समस्या ये है कि किस तरीके से उन बच्चों को, विशेष तौर पर एलकेजी और यूकेजी के बच्चों को हम पढ़ना सिखाएं, क्योंकि लिखने पर ज्यादा जो रहता है, पढ़ने पर नहीं रहता, तो उसके लिए थोड़ा सा
Good morning, I'm Vilasha from DPS Ghaziabad. Right now, some of my friends were saying that the senior students, especially 11th and 12th, they want to know the summary, the gist of the chapter, and then it's wind up for them. If we take the textbook of class 12, there are 3 things there. One is Lost Spring. Second is elementary school classroom in Islam, a poem, a beautiful poem by Spender. Third one is a roadside stand. I remember one of my students before the pre-board sending a beautiful poem on all the chapters of class 12. And he said that there is so much of poverty in class 12 textbook that I feel like being really a poor person. And this is my experience, ma'am, that after reading these 3 chapters, whenever there is a notice on some cultural program for the downtrodden people, for fundraising program, I am compelled to give 5 on 5 even in CBSE, because the students who have read those chapters and the teachers who have taken interest in those 3 chapters, they are really giving beautiful and sensible individuals to the society.
I am Usha Chhabra from DPS Rohini. मैं वहाँ हिंदी पढ़ाती हूँ और मैं गर्व से कह सकती हूँ क्लास 7 में मैं जब पढ़ाती हूँ हिंदी, और मैंने भी शुरू किया कि थोड़ा सा जैसे पढ़ा और मैंने कहा अच्छा मेरी ढंग से जरा पढ़ के सुनाना, क्योंकि वहाँ पर डायलॉग्स हैं और अच्छा फेरी वाले का डायलॉग है, अच्छा इसको ऐसे पढ़ना है उसे, और उसके बाद होड़ लग जाती है क्लास में कि मैम ये मैं ऐसे पढ़ सकता हूँ। मैंने कहा नहीं ये इतना अच्छा नहीं आया, ये इधर से, और आप बिलीव करेंगे पूरी क्लास सिर्फ एक ही काम, अच्छा मैम मुझसे सुन लीजिए। तो मुझे लगता है कि अगर हम लोग उसको इस तरह से पढ़ के सुनाएं, और वही रोक देती हूँ मैं चैप्टर आगे नहीं चलती, मैंने कहा पहले इस सेंटेंस को हम वैसा बोलना सीखेंगे, और उससे मुझे इतना फर्क लगता है कि बच्चे बार बार मेरे पास मैम एक बार मेरा सुन लीजिए, एक बार मेरा सुन लीजिए। तो हो सकता है कि कहीं हम अगर जब उसको पढ़ा रहे हैं तो उसके पढ़ाने के ढंग में हम उसमें और थोड़ी रोचकता ले आए। जब हम कहानी सुनाए, वो जो कहानी ठीक है, बच्चे अगर डाइवर्ट होना चाहते भी हैं, उसमें उनको अलाउ कर सकते हैं। चलो अच्छा आप बताओ, उससे क्या उनकी इमेजिनेशन उस समय चेंज हो रही। इट्स गुड थिंग that they are coming out of that same story. 100 of stories are coming out. We can come back again to the same story later on. कोई बात नहीं, एक दिन लगेगा ना, लेकिन बच्चों की कल्पना शक्ति का विकास होगा। Thank you.
We have one more coming from the back, and then we'll come back again because in every session we'll be talking about reading. We'll have lots of opportunities.
I'm Venita from the Amritsar. I have a question, but it is not related to this what we are talking about. It is more related to the cost. Like if we reach out to the community, as you said, that once the students they have developed the reading habit, the libraries they have, that is okay. But if they want to read their own, they want to have their personal books. So are we really looking into the cost of the books also? The nice and the fine illustrated books that you are talking about aren't, or don't you think they'll be out of reach of those below poverty line children? Are we looking into that cost? That we are providing the cost according to the students that they may also love to buy or have their own personal library. So are we really looking into that? That is my question.
So shall we stop at this point and allow the experts to give us their answers? And then we move into the second session. We'll again have a lot of time for discussion. Yes?
It's a very string of questions and very interesting comments. I think the answers don't all lie with the panelists. So I think a lot of peer sharing is also important. I'm sure some of you who have solved these problems can share with each other. But I'll try to answer what I feel about your question, because I think those are kind of interrelated. The question, as I understood, was that the child is in class 8 or 12 or senior classes and are not really into the habit of reading. They want to be told in a capsule form what is there, and the book can just digest that and go and give an exam. So the whole education system, unfortunately, is becoming very exam-oriented, and it is very exam-oriented. Now the issue is what do we do, and why is that happening? I would just like to repeat what I said earlier, that the bonding with reading happens in the earliest grade. Somebody mentioned KG and upper KG. That is the time when this bonding happens, and that is because, as I said, there's a neuroscientific basis to this, what I'm saying. Because the brain is developing very fast, the brain connections are getting formed, and that is the time when this connection has to be formed. Otherwise, later it becomes very difficult when you go into class 5 or class 8. Now, that's an analysis of the situation. But also, I think, what do you do later? I mean, it's not that, okay, somebody has not learned to get associated with reading. Also, very importantly, again, I think it should be a very non-threatening situation. Now, you see, if I am a child and I am being, my parents is telling me, come and I read with you. Now, it has to be something that I enjoy doing, and I want to just relax and sit with my mother and read the story. But all the time I'm conscious that I'm saying, what did he say? What was the name of the story? What did the character do? So, you're always in a tension that, I'm going to be asked. So that does not remain pleasurable. I'll just give you a little anecdote and pass this on to Jaya. That years back, when I had just started in my career, I was with NCERT, we started working on picture story books. And I was asked to take some of the group of children wherever in the hills and पेड़ के नीचे बैठ करके और उनसे कहानी सुनाती थी और उनसे पूछती थी कि कैसी लगी आपको कहानी. Now I was into reading as reading, not as an academic activity. So my whole thing was कि अच्छा अब आप सुनाओ कहानी क्या जैसे मैंने कहानी सुनाई आप सुनाओ. I remember there was a story. I'm sorry if I'm taking a little time, but I think it's more कैसे अपने आप को बचाओ. तो वो फड़फड़ाने लगता है पर घबराहट में उड़ नहीं पाता है. इतने में एक चूहा उधर से निकलता है और वो बिल्ली उसकी तरफ भाग जाती है बजाय इसके तोते की तरफ आने के, और तोते को जान आती है, वो उड़ जाता है. और इतनी देर वो जो चूहा होता है वो पेड़ के अंदर उसका जो होल होता है उसमें चला जाता है. वो बिल्ली बेचारी देखती रह जाती है, तो तोता भी चला जाता है और वो भी. अब ये कहानी थी, बहुत अच्छी इलस्ट्रेटेड थी और मैं उनको सुना रही थी. फिर मैंने कहा अच्छा बताओ आप वैसे कोई कहानी सुनाओगे मुझे. तो एक खड़ा होता लड़का, थोड़ा बड़ा था, खड़ा होता है और कहता है लालच बुरी बला है. So what I understood from that was कि बच्चे जब कहानी लोग कहते ना moral values दो stories के through, तो यही सोचते रहते हैं कि इसमें क्या moral value है, So somewhere you are, I would think, spoiling the fun for the child or the excitement of the child for the child. कि आप सारा stress उस पे दे रहे हैं, तुमने इससे क्या सीखा? So I think it is very important to make it a very non-threatening, relaxed activity which children will enjoy. That is what will really keep them in it.
There were 2-3 questions. Yes, for this 8-year-old, of course, she's said very, very succinctly. But I'll just add a little thing. When internationally we worked on the researches, what is happening and things like these, what is the definition, what is actually this habit of reading? Then actually it says, a habit of reading means when the child reads voluntarily, frequently, and enjoys reading. It's as simple as that. And the moment voluntarily word comes, the moment you're getting after the child's life to read, and you're like asking him questions and you're making him and all that, then the whole fun is gone. So habit of reading doesn't ever come with compel. At an early stage, that's the best time to catch them young. That's where actually you form the habit. And the habit doesn't come by telling a child to do something or not. It just comes by giving and providing an opportunity. You throw the books around, you develop an enticing corner somewhere, and you allow a certain time when you cuddle with the child, you sit. If she's not in a mood and if she's breaking away, there's no point in binding and putting that bind, because that's the reading time, so she must sit with you. Then the whole fun is lost. Then reading habit will never come. I'll just give you a very short example, because examples really, remain in your mind forever. That's why. Otherwise, one doesn't want to go into detail. This concept of classroom corners and corner libraries is a little recent one. A few years, we've started this corner library and concept, छोटा सा एक कॉर्नर घर में भी हो सकता है जहाँ हम बैठ के करें अच्छा cozy corner where you put throw away 2 cushions and things like these. We started this realizing, of course, it came for us more because of a need of situation. सरकारी स्कूलों में जगह नहीं होती है, लाइब्रेरी की स्पेस ही नहीं होती है, कमरा ही नहीं मिलता है, तो क्या करें, लाइब्रेरी तो फिर भी लेना है, तो कॉर्नर आ गया. It was started more because of the functional need. But then I realized that it became the most successful model everywhere. Why? Because it was readily available, first of all. Any child could just pick up, voluntarily pick up, whenever she wanted to, and whenever she had the time. Teacher को भी मन हुआ, अरे पानी के बारे में पढ़ा रहे हैं, इसके बारे में चलो एक किताब की स्टोरी सुना दें फिर पढ़ाएं, तो वो थोड़ा आसान हो जाता है. अब सेपरेट लाइब्रेरी में कब जाएंगे, कब होगा, फिर वो सारी बात खत्म हो जाती है. दूसरी बात ये हुई जो मेरे को सबसे ज्यादा अच्छी लगी कि जब ऐसी लाइब्रेरी का कॉन्सेप्ट डेवलप हुआ, उसमें सब भिड़ गए. Children got excited that we will develop the corner, let's sajaw it, let's, we will read something, and out of that story we'll draw pictures and put it here. That just became a, excuse to read and then, put from those books something. Now, once they started doing that in school with the help of teachers and things, gradually we just, started this brainwave. Why don't we have a corner in a house? छोटे से घर में हमारा तो जब बस झोपड़ी है, छोटा सा एक कमरा है, वहाँ कैसे अच्छा कोई बात नहीं, एक छोटा वॉल ले लो, वो आपका कॉर्नर होगा. ऐसे करके we just started, this idea everywhere. In Sri Lanka, believe it or not, things really happen, sometimes by magic. We just mooted this idea and said, Acha chalo, let's have this momentum where we keep telling every teacher to talk with parents, and then usually the mothers are very proactive, they are so literate and empowered that they want the children to do very well. And poor खेत में काम करने वाली, they come to school, drop their child, and pick up the child सरकारी स्कूलों की. And they would come and we would talk to them and say, so what about, having a little corner for child? But हम किताबें कहाँ से लाएंगे? We cannot afford. Same thing that somebody was saying, that it's not easy to get books. But when you want, it just starts off with the little magazines, a little newspaper, the little scrapbook which the child develops. Now for you, you're thinking of only those glossy illustrated books. My dear, even that scrapbook is the best book in the world for the child. She will read her own book 100 times. But that's also reading. That's also contributing to habit of reading. And they would then, it would become, and suddenly we realize in a year's time in Anuradhapura, there's this huge district, every household actually had a corner in their home, small or big, where, the children were going home and proudly showing, this is my reading corner. And there would be patawari, but there would be a little cushion where they would be sitting, and a little thing, where the little pocket which the mother had made, because she saw it in the school, the pocket board where you could put the books. So that became a display item for them. These are the ideas galore, and itne hote hain. It's just about, thinking about these things, and ये सब psyche पे affect करता है बच्चे की पढ़ने. So it's not just about, reading. Of course, I know for modern children and our society, things are very challenging with the TV and so many other attractions. There are methods. But I just want to come back to the cost of books, because that's very important. Cost of books is, for a good quality book, yes, I agree, a Katha book would always be more attractive. But yes, the cost is more, and so even Room to Read could not afford too many Katha books, honestly. So we would have some of them. We would but have, NBD, CBD also, and we would have, some other versions also. We would develop, our own books just to supplement them. But let me tell you, making, for little children at least, making simple books is really not a very big thing. You can make big books out of hand. Or, you just print out something and, stick in those words there, cut and put them, draw yourself. The drawing may not be very beautiful. So some books can be contributed by these kind of books. Some can be, the expensive one. It can be a mix of match, because everything has a value. So it's just a matter of, good books doesn't necessarily mean only good illustrations and thoughts. It means also good quality by way of content, by way of level of the child. If you have a good quality book, it will also take care of where the child's level is. Simple books, catchy words, a very nice phrase which is, just 2 words, which is attractive enough for the child to read and feel confident and feel that sense of achievement. Oh, I read 2 books today. Those kind of things. For older books, older children, of course, there are a lot of challenges, and we will have more opportunities to talk about. So time is up, right?
Thank you. We will be moving for tea now. I would like to request Parvinder to come here, round up this discussion that happened, and add any point.
When should the child start reading, or how should we go about it? In Katha, we always believe that we should first listen to the child. Listening to the child is very important. We listen to the child and encourage the child to speak. The stories will automatically come, because the story comes from the child's surrounding, what happened at home. While I was walking to school, what was happening. So then, once the child starts speaking, the vocabulary is coming to you. The story is being formed there and then. And that's the story that the teacher can take into the classroom. That's the story that will develop with the child. Then you don't have to force the child to, learn a word or do something. The child is speaking those words, is using those words. The teacher is a facilitator who's helping the child to do so. So this was one point that I wanted to make. The other was about these beautiful libraries and things. For reading, encouraging reading, so you actually don't need a very space to do so. We are doing this I Love Reading program in the municipal corporation schools, 85 schools in Delhi, and we have what we call as story rooms for them. We don't call them as libraries. We have these beautiful, spaces where the children have painted, put some words over there from the characters that they love. And these are the children who have taken charge of those rooms. We call them as master student librarians. So they have their own register or their own copies where they start reading, they're putting in the names of the characters or their storybooks, and then they decide what activity would they want to do. So when you give it to the child, you empower the child and you make child the center of that activity and that space, I think everything follows automatically. That's what our experience has been. And thank you so much. Thanks to the family.